Now, Captain, that's our guys on that roof. If we don't move now, they're dead. Elena's headset hissed with static. Then Chief Mason's voice snapped back in, raw with adrenaline. Grey Wolf's convoy is rolling. You've got 10 seconds to greenlight the hit or wave him goodbye. She watched the grainy drone feed, a battered pickup, 2 technicals, and the sliver of a human shape dragged across the rooftop, hands bound. No PID yet, just a silhouette. Just a maybe. ROE says no strike without positive ID on the HVT. The battle captain reminded her from across the TOC, voice too calm, too distant. And ROE doesn't mention what we do when our people are being executed live. Mason shot back. Say again, Delta Liaison. Are we clear to breach? Elena's fingers tightened around the edge of the table until her knuckles ached. If she pushed the SEALs forward now, they'd be punching into a choke point they hadn't cleared, into kill zones she suspected, but couldn't prove. If she held them, Grey Wolf might vanish again. Or maybe he was never there. Maybe this was just bait. A scream, distant, distorted, spiked through the audio feed and cut off. Markova, Mason barked. Call it! Her mouth went dry. Orders from JSOC pulsed in the back of her mind. HVT priority over all other objectives. Her voice came out low, almost calm. Chief, we're not going in, not yet. Silence. Then softly, disbelieving. Say again? The drone camera swung, catching a flare of movement on the rooftop, something that looked horribly like a body going over the edge. Elena didn't look away. Hold position, she repeated. That's an order. 36 hours earlier, FOB Raven, Al-Sara Desert, UTC+3. The rotors hadn't even wound down when someone laughed. Elena stepped off the MH-60M into a wall of heat and dust, helmet tucked under one arm, kit still riding too neat on her frame after hours in transit. The tarmac of FOB Raven shimmered under the late afternoon sun, the horizon a wavering line of beige that swallowed distance and mercy in equal measure. That the new intel, kid? A voice called over the fading thump of blades. Male, amused. Thought we ordered operators, not interns. She didn't look up immediately. The habit was deliberate. Take in the base first. One runway, a row of beige tents, a couple of squat concrete buildings bristling with antennae. An MRAP rolled by, its armor dust-streaked, crew bored enough to stare. Radio chatter leaked from the open hangar doors. Short, clipped brevity calls. The same vocabulary of urgency she'd heard in too many places to count. Only then did she lift her gaze. A small knot of men waited near the hangar. Beards, ball caps, plate carriers bearing the comfortable scuffs of long usage. The one in front wore a Navy-issue blouse unbuttoned at the collar, rank taped over, sunglasses reflecting the helicopter like a black mirror. The set of his shoulders screamed ownership. He smirked when he saw her. Welcome to Al-Sara, Boot. You get lost on your way to the S2 shop? The others chuckled. It rolled over her like harmless surf. She adjusted the strap of her bag, feeling sweat already prickling between shoulder blades under the armor. A young petty officer with a clipboard approached, half apologetic. Ma'am, this flight was supposed to have Captain Markova from... He stopped, eyes flicking to the name tape on her chest. She gave him the smallest of nods. I know. The SEAL in sunglasses caught that. His grin widened, shark-like. Oh, we got ourselves a captain? Outstanding. S3 finally sent us someone to fix our PowerPoints. He stepped forward. I'm Ryan Cole. Around here they call me the SEAL Captain. But you can just call me Sir, seeing as you're... She snapped to attention. The motion cut him off. The laughter behind him faltered. Dust swirled, caught in the downwash's ghost. Elena brought her hand up in a sharp regulation salute. The angle was textbook, her gaze locked on his, unblinking. Captain Elena Markova, United States Army. Reporting as ordered, sir. Delta Force Liaison, attached to Task Force Raven under JSOC authority. The words landed with a soft, physical impact. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Cole's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The sunglasses suddenly looked less like armor and more like a shield. He returned the salute, slower than etiquette required, as if his muscles were remembering the motion after too much time off. "At ease, Captain," he said, voice flattening. "Didn't realize Delta was recruiting out of ROTC these days." There it was, the pivot from laughter to defense, the need to regain some height after being knocked a rung down. She let her posture relax to parade rest, not a millimeter more. "Delta recruits out of anywhere it finds talent, sir," she said, "sometimes even from PowerPoint." A couple of his men snorted before they could stop themselves. Cole's head turned just enough that the sound died. "Cute," he said. "You'll have plenty of time to practice jokes in the tow, see? We've got a busy schedule." He jerked his chin at the hangar. "Debrief in 5. Try not to get lost." He turned and walked away without waiting to see if she followed. The others drifted after him, some curious, some already dismissive. One, broad-shouldered, older, a chief by his insignia, gave her a small, measuring look that didn't quite qualify as hostile. Elena exhaled slowly, the air hot in her lungs. She'd seen this before, the invisible checklist being updated in the minds around her. Female, Army, Liaison. Delta label or not, she was arriving with more rank on paper than trust on the ground, and the latter mattered more out here where metal and bone met. She walked toward the hangar, boots crunching on the grit, the smell of JP8 and burned coffee growing stronger with each step. Inside, the talk was a cave of screens and maps. Radios murmured in multiple nets. A large monitor displayed a satellite view of a city's outskirts, its streets scribbled with vectors and colored icons. Grey Wolf's sigil, a simple gray dot, sat marked near the ruins of what looked like a hospital complex. Cole stood at the front of the room now, cap off, briefing clicker in hand. He glanced at her once, sharp and assessing, then gestured to an empty chair near the back. It was a subtle placement, the physical equivalent of, "You're in the room, but not at the table." She took it anyway. "All right, listen up," Cole said, voice carrying easy authority. "New face in the room, as you've noticed. Captain Markova here is our liaison from upstairs." A ripple of humor. "She's going to help us kill Grey Wolf in a way that makes the suits feel warm and fuzzy." A few heads turned toward her. She met none of their eyes directly, keeping her focus on the map. ROE for the theater flickered in the corner of the main screen. Positive ID required for HVT engagement. Collateral damage to be minimized in urban sectors. No strikes within 200 meters of medical facilities. Her gaze snagged on the last line, then drifted back to the gray dot near the hospital ruins. First impressions were over. Underestimation was a familiar cloak, and she shrugged into it without complaint. They thought she was here to approve or deny, to nod along. They didn't yet understand that when the time came, she wouldn't be a spectator. She would be the one who said go or don't, and every name on the wall that followed would whisper back to her in the dark. The briefing bled into another, smaller briefing, the room shedding bodies until only the ones with clearances and grudges remained. The sun outside dropped behind the low concrete of Fob Raven, leaving the talk lit entirely by screens and strips of tired fluorescent tubes. Someone had replaced the burned coffee. It still tasted burned. Elena sat at the end of the central table, tablet propped in front of her, while the main screen shifted from the generic theater overview to a close-up of Al-Sara's outskirts. Streets resolved into thin, pale lines, blocks into gray smudges. One block, near the edge of the screen, had been circled in red. Al-Sara General, the man by the projector said, or what's left of it. He wore civilian clothes, a checked shirt under a tan jacket. But the lanyard at his neck carried a badge that opened doors, and the way he planted himself at the front of the room needed no rank tape. Mid-40s, hair threaded with gray, eyes that had seen enough and thought they'd seen it all. Captain Markova, he said without looking at her. I'm Aaron Hale, Agency. He let the word hang there, as if that alone should answer any questions about why he was in the room. Elena nodded once. You're handling human sources in the city. Among other things. He clicked the remote. The hospital zoomed in. A broken rectangle, part of the roof collapsed, yard cluttered with wreckage and wild scrub. This lovely resort is where our mutual friend Grey Wolf likes to meet his people, or used to, before the last round of airstrikes. On a side monitor, a feed from the MQ-9 Reaper rolled in. Live video, time code in the corner, green crosshairs steady over the shattered building. The drone's sensor swept, image stuttering as it changed zoom. No movement obvious. ROE reminder, Hale said. No strikes within 200 meters of medical facilities, even abandoned ones, without country team sign-off. So if we want Grey Wolf here, we've got to go in on foot. Lucky you. Cole leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. We've walked into worse. Elena tracked her gaze between the feed and the static imagery on her tablet, which held an older version of the same scene. She flicked between timestamps with a finger, the tablet screen cool against her gloved hand. Your source? She asked. Hale's mouth twitched. We have multiple. That's not an answer. It's the answer you get. He finally looked at her. Your people at Bragg can read the sanitized reports if they want granularity. She held his stare. He was baiting her to lean on her Delta title, to flash compartments and acronyms and try to pry open his vault. She wouldn't win that game in front of Cole. On the main screen, a red icon pulsed, HVT proximity, historical. What's the recency on your last confirmed sighting? She asked. Hale clicked again. A text box appeared over the hospital image. Humant, 72 HRS AJO 2100L. Her tablet, still linked to a separate Intel feed, showed something else. She frowned. Your metadata says 72 hours, she said. My SIGINT summary has movement flagged there 90 hours ago. Why the mismatch? Hale shrugged. Different sources, different clocks. Welcome to the sandbox. Elena zoomed in on the tablet's timeline. The 90-hour marker was tagged with a file number and a note. Possible HVT convoy. Audio unconfirmed. The 72-hour mark on his slide had no corresponding entry on her side. Captain? Cole said, watching her rather than the screen. Problem. Just aligning feeds, she said. Her skin prickled. This wasn't just messy data. The gap was too clean, one window emphasized, one quietly omitted. She scrolled down to the access log. The hospital imagery had been pulled and re-uploaded 12 hours ago by an account flagged Agency LN, Hales. Current ROE on this site? She asked quietly, forcing her voice neutral. The battle captain at the side of the room responded. No kinetic strikes. Absent positive ID on the HVT's face. Ground ops allowed with minimized footprint. No collateral above level 2. So even if she wanted to flatten the place from the sky, she couldn't. The only tools were men and timing. Hale resumed. My guy says Grey Wolf switched to this location after the last botched attempt to grab him in the market. Meetings here are short, 20 minutes in and out. If we're going to catch him, we need a team on the ground within 5 of his arrival, 10 tops. And your guy has been right how many times? Elena asked. Enough that I'm still employed. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Look, Captain, I get that Delta taught you to trust no one and nothing, including your own reflection. But if you keep second-guessing every datum, we'll still be talking while Grey Wolf retires to the coast. Cole let out a breath that might have been a laugh. He's got a point. Elena tasted metal on the back of her tongue. Memory, not blood. Another tox, another agency face, another reliable source whose perfect intel had walked a team into a field that erupted under their boots. She remembered the grainy helmet cam footage cutting out, the way the silence afterward had seemed heavier than noise. She lowered her eyes to the tablet before the past could show on her face. Then we validate what we can, she said. Task the Reaper to maintain persistent stare. Pattern of life, vehicle counts, heat signatures. If your source is right, we'll see movement consistent with a meet. If he's wrong or compromised, we might see something else. Hale rolled his shoulders. ISR is already tasked. We're not the only show in town. Retask it, she said. Under Delta authority if you need a pretext. I'm not putting a team within rifle range of that building based on a ghost and your gut. Cole's chair creaked as he leaned forward. You realize, he said, that the longer we sit on our hands, the more chances this guy has to snatch locals or one of ours. We've already got a missing operator out there. Time isn't your friend. It's not yours either, Elena said. You go in blind, you're gambling all of you on a coin toss someone else is flipping. For a moment, the room held the possibility of a real argument. Then Hale sighed theatrically. Fine, he said. We'll push for more ISR, but when the window closes, it closes. Don't say I didn't warn you. The meeting dissolved into smaller clusters, voices low, chairs scraping. Hale stepped aside to take a call on a secure handset. Cole moved toward the map, conferring with his senior chief. Elena stayed at the table. With her left hand, she tapped into a separate comms application on the tablet. One few people in the room knew she had. The header read, JSOC Delta, Liaison Channel, Compartmented. She typed without looking up. Possible. Intel Sanitization Re, HVT Grey Wolf, Al-Sara General. Timestamp discrepancy between agency, HUMANT, and SIGINT logs. Request quiet audit of agency data handling for TF Raven. No local action requested yet. She tagged it, priority, low vis, encrypted, and sent. The message vanished into a place where people she'd never meet would decide whether to believe her. Captain, she glanced up. Cole stood by the main screen, remote in hand. He flicked to the live feed again. The hospital ruins sat under the drone's gaze, empty, colorless. Then, as they watched, a vehicle edged into frame. A dusty sedan, slowly rolling up the broken access road. A figure stepped out. No zoom yet, no clear face. Just the outline of a man in a long coat, flanked by 2 armed escorts. He moved with unhurried assurance, as if he owned the dead building and the air around it. The time code marked the moment. Is that him? Cole asked. Elena didn't answer immediately. She watched the way the escorts scanned, the angles they chose, the door they used instead of the gaping main entrance. Grey Wolf wasn't a face yet, just a shape, a possibility, a pattern in the way danger walked. Her fingers found the edge of the table, pressing down. "Get me every second of that feed archived," she said softly. "If it's him, this is the closest we've been." And if it wasn't, she thought, then someone was working very hard to make them believe it was. The village looked harmless from 30,000 feet. On the talk's main screen, under the green wash of night vision, it was just a cluster of low, square houses and narrow alleys, a darker smudge against the desert. The Reaper's sensor drifted over it, crosshairs touching roofs, courtyards, a small walled compound at the eastern edge. The target. "Objective Viking," the battle captain said, laser pointer circling the compound. "Suspected weapons cache feeding Grey Wolf's people. Single-story structure, courtyard, attached outbuilding." ROE for the operation glowed in red text at the corner of the screen. No indirect fires in populated area. PID on armed hostiles required before engagement. Collateral to be minimized. Cole stood with one hip propped against the table, helmet under his arm, eyes flicking between the map and the monitors. His team clustered behind him, already in kit, rifles slung, faces obscured by NVG mounts and beard. "This is simple," he said. "We insert, we cordon, we hit the stack, we pull the toys, we exfil. AC-130 is on call if someone gets froggy. In and out before anyone knows we were there." Elena sat opposite him, tablet on the table, headset resting around her neck. She'd been awake for 20 hours and felt every one, but her voice stayed flat. "Correction," she said. "You insert, cordon, and clear with soft hands. No destruction of property unless you're fired on. We're there to confirm and seize, not turn the place into a crater." Cole's jaw flexed. "You're worried about the feelings of people who've been arming the guys trying to kill us. I'm worried about the next 3 months," Elena said. "You level one house, half the village picks a side, and it won't be ours." Hale, leaning in a corner with a mug of coffee, watched the exchange with tired amusement. "Consider this a trial run, Captain," he told Cole. "Show upstairs you can play nice with the locals. They might let you off the leash later." Cole didn't bother to hide his eye roll. "Upstairs, downstairs, everyone gets a vote but the guys on the door." He looked back at Elena. "You're calling this a recon in force. I'm treating it as a real hit. If we find a cache, I want permission to take it apart. If you find an active cache and an armed cell, you detain, disarm, and mark for follow-on exploitation," she replied. "No theatrics. No unauthorized demolitions. ROE also says I'm allowed to defend my team. Defend, yes. Initiate a feud, no." For a heartbeat, it felt like Chapter 2's argument all over again. Two doctrines grinding against each other. His, honed by years of door-kicking. Hers, shaped by watching how a single bad decision poisoned entire provinces. The battle captain cleared his throat. "Birds inbound, H-hour and 40. Cole pushed off the table. "You heard the woman," he told his men. "Soft hands. Inside voices. Maybe we'll even say please." There were murmurs, the muted clink of kit as they filed out. One of them, Chief Mason, paused by her chair. "You riding along, ma'am?" She shook her head. "I'll be here. Someone has to watch the whole board." He nodded once, as if that answer matched something in his head about who she was. Then he was gone. 30 minutes later, the MH-47Gs lifted off, low thunder rattling the tents. In the talk, the drone feed shifted to follow. Elena slipped her headset on, plugging into the assault net. The world narrowed to green images and disembodied voices. "Viking 1, this is Raven Talk, radio check." "Raven, Viking 1, loud and clear." Cole's voice came back, muffled through his mic, steady. The Chinooks were dark shapes against darker sky on the Reaper's feed. Rotor wash kicking up ghostly halos of dust as they flared for landing on a field outside the village. Dots spilled from them, resolving into human forms as the seals moved out, forming their cordon in disciplined lines of heat. "Remember," Elena said, keying her mic, "no fires unless you see weapons. We're guests, not conquerors." "Copy," Cole said, with just enough emphasis to make clear what he thought of the metaphor. They moved in. The Reaper zoomed down to watch the target compound. Two figures, probably adult males, sat in the courtyard, heat signatures bright against cool stone. No visible rifles, no obvious guards on the roof. "Looks quiet," Hale murmured behind her. "Probably asleep at the wheel." Or waiting, Elena thought. On her tablet, she flicked to a side-by-side view. The compound 3 days ago, then now. Something small nagged at her. Less clutter near the outbuilding. Tire tracks leading to the alley that hadn't been there before. Viking 1 Raven, recommend approach from the east wall, avoid main gate. Less line of sight from the street, she said. Already on it, Cole replied. Helmet cam feeds bloomed on auxiliary screens. Green corridors, low walls, the jitter of movement. She saw gloved hands on rough plaster, glimpses of sky. The murmured cadence of commands passed from man to man. "Set on breach," Mason's voice reported. 4 on the stack. Elena exhaled slowly. "Row," she reminded herself. "PID on weapons. Civilians first." Viking 1, Raven, last minute. Confirm no non-combatants in immediate breach lane if you can. "Raven will ask politely through the wall," Cole muttered. Breaching. The muffled thump of a mechanical breach came through her headset. The camera jolted as the door gave. She braced for chaos, for shouts, flashes, the bark of suppressed rifles. Instead, there was silence. Then, "Raven, Viking 1, Mason said, voice different. "We've got kids." The helmet cam swung, adjusting focus. A narrow hallway, a door flung open. Beyond it, a cluster of small shapes huddled together on thin mattresses against a concrete wall, eyes huge in the green glow. No weapons, no men, just fear. Elena's stomach tightened. "Confirm," she said. "Children only?" "Affirmative," Mason replied. 8, maybe 10 of them. No adult males in the rooms we've cleared. No sign of a stash. Just blankets and cheap toys. Cole cut in. "We still have not cleared the outbuilding. Possible cache there. And possible civilians in between," Elena said. "You fire on anyone tonight and this village closes to us for good. Or we walk away and they restock the whole district," he shot back. She stared at the Reaper feed. The outbuilding's roof glowed faintly warmer than the rest. Recent activity, maybe. But the tire tracks told another story. Something heavy had come and gone in the last day. If there had been weapons, they might already be elsewhere. Too late again. Not by chance. Her fingers tightened on the headset. If she kept them searching, tempers would flare. Someone would make a bad call. A terrified father would reach for something that looked like a weapon, and then it wouldn't matter what anyone meant. "Viking 1, Raven," she said. "You are not to detain non-combatants. Confirm no weapons, secure IDs if you can, and exfil. We're done here." A beat of stunned silence. "Say again?" Cole's voice was flat. "You heard me. No cache, no armed hostiles. We're not turning a shelter into a battlefield. Abort search and RTB." She heard the anger in his exhale even through encryption. "Copy abort," he said. "We'll sweep fast for anything obvious and then we're gone." On one of the feeds, A seal bent to pick something up from the floor near the main room, an object left half under a mattress. He held it up to the camera. A cheap black cell phone, screen cracked. Found a burner, Mason reported. Bagging it. Do it, Elena said. Everything else, leave as you found it. As the team herded the children back into their room, closing doors gently, she watched the Reapers wide shot. Nothing moved in the alleys. No armed men rushed to defend their supposed cache. Whoever had been here was gone, and had known when to leave. Later, back in the dim quiet of the tuck, she'd watch a tech pull data from that phone and see a number cross-referenced with a single name in the database, Grey Wolf. For now, all she had was the hollow taste of another near miss and Cole's clipped report. Raven, Viking 1, exfil complete. No joy on the stash. Elena removed her headset, the ghosts of children's wide eyes lingering behind her own. In the emptying room, Hale gave a low whistle. Hell of a test case, he said. For what it's worth, Captain, you just traded hardware for hearts and minds. She didn't answer. Hearts and minds could be lost overnight. Hardware had a way of finding its way back into the wrong hands, and somewhere between those two truths, she was supposed to make the next call. The checkpoint didn't exist on any official map. It was a ring of HESCO barriers and rusting concertina wire thrown up along the dirt road a kilometer outside Phobe Raven, where American jurisdiction blurred into local militia control. Under the harsh white floodlights, the desert looked colorless, all contours and shadows, exhaust fumes hanging low in the still air. Two MR-apps idled nearby, engines rumbling, their armored hulls looming like patient animals. Militia pickup trucks clustered on the opposite side of the wire, men with battered AKs leaning against their doors, scarves pulled up against the dust. In the middle, between worlds, stood the informant. He was on his knees, blindfolded, flex cuffs tight around his wrists. His clothes were dusty but not ragged, cheap sneakers instead of sandals. A militia fighter in a faded track jacket gripped his shoulder. Captain Markova, the militia commander said, spreading his hands as she approached. As promised, a man who knows the wolf you hunt. Commander Rashid wore no insignia, just a clean-pressed shirt under his vest and the easy confidence of someone used to being the loudest voice in the room. His eyes were sharp, weighing her the way he weighed everything, for leverage. Elena stopped just inside the shadow of the nearest MRAP. Cole stood a pace back on her right, rifle slung, helmet on, expression flat. Hale lurked to the side, hands in jacket pockets, letting the locals direct their words to the uniform with the most visible rank. "Where did you pick him up?" Elena asked. Rashid smiled. "He came to us. Men who fear the wolf sometimes come to the shepherd." "Answered the wrong phone," Hale said under his breath. The burner from the village sat in an evidence bag on the folding table between them, its cracked screen reflecting the floodlights. A tech had pulled the logs, half a dozen calls to a number tagged in their system with a single, stark alias, Grey Wolf. Elena nodded at the kneeling man. "Take off the blindfold." Slowly. The track jacket fighter hesitated, looking to Rashid. The commander gave a permissive tilt of his head. The blindfold came away. The man blinked, squinting against the light. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe late 20s, hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. Fear sat on him like a second skin. "You know who we are?" Elena asked in Arabic, keeping her tone mild. He swallowed. "Americans," he said, "and Rashid's people." "I'm Captain Elena Markova," she said. "This is Captain Cole. If you lie to us, you will not get a second chance to tell the truth. Do you understand?" A small nod. You used this phone, she continued, tapping the bag with a knuckle. You spoke to a man we call Grey Wolf. He licked his lips. I deliver messages, sometimes food. I don't ask names. But you know this one, Rashid cut in smoothly. He arranged the taking of men from our neighborhoods. He arranged bombs on the road. He took a cousin of mine. That last part could be true, could be theater. With Rashid, it was always both. Elena kept her eyes on the kneeling man. What do you want? She asked. Why come to Rashid? Because I am not a fighter, he said, voice cracking. I drive. I carry packages. They said it was money, medicine. But I heard things. I saw things. I know the meeting place. Cole shifted his weight, gravel crunching under his boot. Of course he does, he muttered in English. Right on schedule. Rashid shot him a look. He risks his life coming here. You doubt before you listen? I doubt everything, Cole said. Elena raised a hand, quieting them both. What meeting place? She asked the informant. He glanced nervously at Rashid, then back at her. The wolf. He does not sleep in one place, but he meets his men. There is an old building near the river, a storage hall. Tomorrow night, after evening prayer. He will come to take money, to speak to his lieutenants. Hale's head tilted. Convenient timing. Elena ignored him. How do you know he will be there? Because I was told to bring a car, the man said. To wait by the bridge. To take him from the hall after the meeting. They trust me. They think I am too afraid to speak. The words tumbled out too fast, the details tumbling over each other. Location, time, role. It was the kind of clarity she usually had to claw from sources over weeks, too perfect. She felt the old instinct flare. Step back, assume the angles are wrong, find the trap. But alongside it ran something else. Cold knowledge of their last operations. A cache missed by hours. A hospital entrance rigged just where they would have gone. Whoever was feeding Grey Wolf their moves was doing a better job at shaping the battlefield than they were. If she turned away from this, she might be walking past the only door out of that pattern. ROE for human sources is clear, she said quietly to Cole in English. No unilateral operations based on single-source human. We shadow it first. ISR confirms, then we talk about putting boots near that hall. Rashid heard ISR and hall, read enough body language to frown. You promised protection, he said. If my man speaks, you act. Otherwise, his blood is wasted, and mine as well. I promised nothing, Elena said. You brought him here. That doesn't make him truth. The informant tensed, eyes wet with panic. Please, he said in Arabic. If they discover I came here, I am dead. My family is dead. You must take him when he comes. Only then will my betrayal mean something. Cole's gaze flicked between them. What's he saying? She translated, keeping it stripped of drama. Even bare, the plea hung heavy. This smells wrong, Cole said. We roll a team to that hall. We're walking into a welcome party. And if we don't, Elena said, and he's telling the truth. He didn't answer immediately. She stepped closer to the kneeling man, the floodlight making his pupils pinpricks. We will look, she said. We will watch. If what you say is true, there will be a chance. Not enough, Rashid snapped. You Americans always want to watch, to count, to wait. Meanwhile, our people die. He jabbed a finger toward the base. You have tanks, planes, guns? Use them. I have constraints, she said, letting some steel into her voice. And I intend to keep your men alive as well as mine. Shadowing the meat is the only option on the table tonight. Hale stepped in then, voice mild. We can split the difference. Task the drone, maybe move a small element closer. If the wolf shows his face, we decide then. Rashid looked unconvinced but wary of pushing harder. His power stopped at the wire. Hers extended beyond it into places his threats didn't reach. Elena gave a single, clipped nod. We'll commit ISR and a QRF on standby, she said. No one moves on that hall until we have positive confirmation. Your man will be held in protective custody on our side of the wire until then. Rashid's jaw clenched. The informant sagged with a mixture of relief and terror. As the militia handed him over to American MPs, Elena's radio vibrated at her shoulder, a secure call request from the TOC. She stepped away from the lights, into the shadow of the MRAP, and keyed in. Markova, she said. Delta Cell, a clipped voice replied. JSOX just pushed an update. Grey Wolf has been elevated to Tier 1 priority, ROE modified, capture if feasible, lethal force authorized if not. You have authority to act on time-sensitive opportunities. Time-sensitive, single source. The words rang against each other like struck metal. Copy, she said. The call clicked off. Across the checkpoint, Commander Rashid watched her, sensing a shift even without hearing a word. Cole watched her too, expression guarded. Elena looked back at the blindfolded man now being led toward the American side, at the floodlit road, at the dark beyond where a storage hall by a river might already be waiting. Shadow first, she told herself, then decide. But as Grey Wolf's new priority echoed in her ear, she knew every minute she chose to watch instead of strike would feel less like caution and more like defiance of the invisible hands above her. The secure comms room always felt colder than the rest of the base. It was a windowless box layered in soundproofing and security stickers, humming with the quiet menace of encrypted hardware. Blue light from the monitors washed Elena's face, flattening the lines of fatigue into something harder. The faint thrum of generators came through the floor like a distant heartbeat. She sat alone at the console, headset snug over one ear, eyes on the screen where a single line blinked. JSOC Delta secure voice connected. Markova, she said. Echo 1 actual, a male voice replied, clipped and impersonal. A call sign, not a name. We read you. You're in the room alone? Affirmative. Then let's not waste satellite time. Paper rustled on the far end. You've received the ROE update on Grey Wolf? Yes. Tier 1 priority. Capture if feasible, lethal authorized if not. Good, Echo 1 said. Our expectation is that you will interpret that aggressively. We're not interested in watching this target slip a fourth time because someone wanted perfect clarity. Her fingers tapped once against her knee, the only outward sign of tension. I understand the urgency, she said. We have a possible meet at a storage hall near the river. Single source human from a driver claiming he runs escort for the HVT. ISR tasking is in progress. I intend to. We're aware of the preliminaries. Echo 1 cut in. You now have additional tools. 2 F-16C platforms have been attached to your theater control for time-sensitive strike on this target. If you confirm his presence, we are prepared to execute immediate air-delivered effects. She pictured it. A pair of jets spearing through the night, a bomb blooming over corrugated metal and concrete. Simple on a slide, chaos on the ground. ROE still prohibits deliberate strikes in dense urban terrain without national approval, she said. The storage hall is near residential structures and a fuel depot. An airstrike there is not a clean solution, even with PID. The ROE also specifies exceptions for Tier 1 threats in imminent movement windows, Echo 1 replied. That's why we gave you the jets. You are expected to weigh that flexibility appropriately. If Grey Wolf is present and moving, we do not want another wait for conditions story in our inbox. His tone was neutral, but she heard the subtext clearly. Delta had a reputation for boldness, not caution. She was supposed to live up to that, even while wearing someone else's patch on her chest. And ground options? She asked. We have a capable SEAL element already in theater. They know the city. I can stage them as primary, with air on call. Use them, Echo 1 said. But if the picture gets muddied, if comms drop or the ground commander hesitates, you are authorized to call the strike yourself. Do you understand, Captain? Not suggest. Call. She stared at the blank wall, seeing another room years ago, another secure line. An officer she'd respected sitting where she sat now, arguing for restraint, then signing a transcript that later became an indictment in all but name when a convoy they hadn't struck turned out to be a bomb factory. His career hadn't survived the hearings. Neither had his sleep. Understood, she said. Final point, Echo 1 continued. As Delta Liaison, your interpretation of this ROE will be the one assessed in the after-action. The SEAL commander can argue tactics all day. The strategic call is yours. You don't get to say, they made me. Clear? There it was, laid bare. No shelter in the chain. Clear, Elena said. Her voice sounded calm to her own ears, which felt like a small betrayal of how tightly her shoulders had drawn. Then bring us something we can brief upstairs, Echo 1 said. Echo 1 out. The line clicked dead. The room seemed quieter afterward, as if the air itself were waiting. She removed the headset and sat for a moment with her hands flat on the table, letting the weight settle. 2 F-16s. A flexible ROE clause. A storage hall whose walls held more questions than answers, and a team of men who would go where she pointed because they thought someone else was ultimately to blame. A soft knock broke the stillness. The door opened a crack. Cole stepped in without waiting for an invite, closing it behind him. His helmet hung from his hand now, hair damp with sweat, shirt dark at the collar. You looked like you were getting chewed on, he said. Wanted to make sure they left some of you intact. She gave him half a smile that never fully formed. Echo 1 sends their love. Grey Wolf is officially more important than our sleep. Wasn't exactly a secret. He dropped into the chair opposite hers, letting it scrape. Hale says you've got jets now. 2 F-16Cs on standby, she said. Tasked for time-sensitive strike on the Hall if we confirm the target and lose ground options. Cole's eyes lit with a kind of hungry practicality. So we stack a team close. Get eyes on. Call the jets if it goes sideways. Nice to know we're not the only ones in the line of fire. ROE is still restrictive, she said. We're near a fuel depot. Civilians in the surrounding blocks. An airstrike there is a very loud message to send. Sometimes loud works, Cole said. You think the locals don't know who's been protecting Grey Wolf? You turn his meeting place into scrap, they'll get the memo. Or they get dead, and we get a diplomatic incident, she countered. We are not dropping ordnance just because we can. Primary plan is ground-led. Your people stage a covert perimeter, maybe an inner cordon if ISR looks right. The jets are on call only. He studied her for a moment. So if this goes bad, it's SEALs bleeding in the alley, while your F-16s orbit overhead, waiting for the right paragraph in the ROE to light up. If this goes bad, she said evenly, I will be the one who pulled you in, and the one who has to explain every body bag. I'm not gambling with your lives to make a point on a PowerPoint slide. His expression shifted, respect and resentment tangling into something complicated. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "An assault plan that keeps your men out of obvious kill funnels," she said. "Insertion routes that don't mirror the last 3 ops, and discipline when I say hold, even if it feels like we're letting him walk. ISR will be our first indicator. No one moves on that hall until we see a pattern consistent with an actual meet, not a trap staged for our benefit." He nodded slowly. "You really think they're shaping the battlefield around us that precisely?" "I think someone is," she said. "And whoever it is knows we're under pressure to act. That's when people make bad calls." The door opened again. Hale slid in, closing it with his heel. He looked between them, reading the air. "So?" he asked. "Did the high priests in your temple grant us permission to smite the wicked?" "We have authority for a limited ground-led operation with air on call," Elena said. "No preemptive strike on the hall. We confirm first." Hale's brows rose. "You turned down free steel from the sky? Brave choice." He tilted his head. "Or career suicidal? Depends how the story ends." "It's the only choice that doesn't turn this base into a crater if we're wrong," she replied. He smiled thinly. "Then I hope, for your sake, that you're right. Because from where I'm standing, you just bought this op in cash with your name on the receipt." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. "Then I'd better make sure everyone else walks away from the store," she said. Outside, somewhere beyond concrete and wire, the generators droned on. The hall by the river waited, and with it, the moment when her interpretation of a few lines of text would decide who lived long enough to argue about it afterward. The city at Euro 100L looked almost peaceful from above. On the drone feed, Al-Sara's streets were veins of pale gray, lamplit intersections, like dim nodes in a tired nervous system. The ruins of Al-Sara General Hospital sat hunched near the edge of the frame, a broken rectangle casting long, jagged shadows. In the talk, the air was thick with recycled coolness and the smell of instant noodles. Screens painted everyone green. Elena stood with one hand on the table, headset in, eyes fixed on the main monitor. "MQ-9 on station," the sensor operator reported. "Angels 2-0, full motion video up." The view tightened. The hospital's collapsed wing, the intact western facade, the yawning dark of the main entrance. Heat signatures glowed inside, small clustered spots that didn't move like combatants. "Possible hostages," the battle captain said quietly. "Basement level, west side." Elena zoomed on her tablet, measuring the pattern. A few larger signatures paced near doors and windows, guards probably. A rifle appeared briefly in one man's hands as he shifted position. "Viking 1, Raven," she said into her mic. "Radio check." "Raven, Viking 1, we've got you," Cole answered. Hum of an engine in the background. "We're 2 blocks south, staged and waiting. Hour is when you say it is." 2 HMWWVs sat in a dark side street, engines idling low. Helmet cam stills showed men in the cramped interior, faces hidden behind goggles and black cloth, weapons resting across their knees. ROE scrolled in the corner of her main screen. No kinetic engagement of HVT without positive visual ID. Minimum collateral in urban sectors. No air-delivered munitions within 200 meters of designated medical facility. She'd read those lines a dozen times, but tonight they felt like a wire pulled tight between too late and too soon. "Update," Cole prompted. "You seeing enough to work with?" "Armed personnel on perimeter," Elena replied. "Probable hostages inside. No PID on Grey Wolf." "Maybe he's the guy with the gun," Cole said. We hit the entrance, clear top down, find out the old-fashioned way. Negative, she said. We're not guessing on a Tier 1 target. We wait. He let a beat of static hang. People inside don't have time to wait. Her jaw flexed. She watched one of the glowing shapes inside shift, kneeling or sitting, then settling back. She imagined zip ties, blindfolds, breaths fogging in the darkness. Sensor, track main access points, she ordered. Call any new vehicles within 200 meters. Copy. Outside, somewhere beyond the concrete walls, a dog barked. A single, distant gunshot cracked, then silence again. Minutes stretched. Cole's team remained a cluster of patient heat in the alley, their IR strobes dark. Then, Raven, ISR, white sedan approaching from east, 4 occupants. The car eased into the frame, headlights off, rolling slow toward the hospital's rear service entrance. It stopped under a broken overhang. Zoom, Elena said. The camera stepped closer. 3 men climbed out, 2 with visible rifles slung, 1 in a long, dark coat. The coated figure moved with deliberate calm, head angled down just enough that the brim of his cap and the shadows from the overhang obscured his face. Her heartbeat ticked up, but her voice stayed level. Viking 1, Raven. Be advised, vehicle just arrived at rear entrance. 3 packs, 1 possible HVT. Stand by. On the other end of the net, she heard the shift in energy. Boots repositioning, metal scraping softly, breath tightening. Copy possible HVT, Cole replied. Recommend we move now while he's inside and focused. We hit the main, they hit rear, we box him in. RO flickered in her mind like a warning light. Positive visual ID. A profile wasn't enough. A walk wasn't enough. She needed the face. Sensor, can you give me facial on that third man? Negative, the operator said. He's staying under cover. I can goose the contrast, but there's nothing clean to work with. On screen, the 3 figures slipped through a side door and vanished. Elena's fingers dug into the edge of the table. Past voices crowded in. You waited, and they died. We needed you to move, not think. Captain, Cole said, sharper now. You have hostages in there and the best shot at Grey Wolf we've had in weeks. ISR confirms armed tangos, a new arrival, matching build. What more do you want? I want his face, she said. We hit from 2 sides. We'll see his face up close. Or you'll see his trigger finger, she countered. And the last thing I do tonight is send your men into a building prepped to kill them. The IED at the village entrance. The way the hospital entrance is uncleared and perfect for a stack. Someone has been reading our playbook. Someone's been reading his too, Cole shot back. He uses human shields. He stages fear. You can't outthink him from a chair. The room felt smaller, the air heavy against her ribs. She glanced at the timestamp, 01 no. Every second stretched between a hostage's heartbeat and a detonator elsewhere. Sensor, any secondaries? Any unusual heat, signatures near main entrance? Negative significant anomalies, came the reply. Nothing I can prove is wired. Which meant nothing she could prove wasn't. Her throat felt dry. The memory of another op surfaced unbidden, men running toward a doorway, the world blooming white, then black. The accusations afterward, the quiet, hollow funerals. Viking 1 Raven, she said. Hold position, no breach authorized at this time. Static. Say again? Cole asked. You will not approach the hospital. Maintain standoff and overwatch only. We continue ISR and look for another opportunity. Captain, they're going to start cutting throats on the roof if we sit. This is not a debate, she snapped. sharper than she intended. "You're my only ground element in range. I will not feed you into an unknown. Hold." Silence stretched thin. Finally, through gritted teeth. "Copy, hold. Viking 1 will maintain position." She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. On screen, the main entrance sat in shadow, empty, a dark mouth. Then, without warning, the image flared. "Flash!" the sensor operator yelled instinctively. A bloom of light and dust erupted from the hospital's front steps, shockwave rippling out in a visible halo. The feed shook as debris rained down. When the image stabilized, the entrance was a cratered mess of rubble and dust. No gore, no clear bodies, just destruction, precisely where a stack of men would have been if she'd said yes. "Holy," the battle captain whispered. "That was an IED, maybe 2. Right where—" "ISR, confirm," Elena said, forcing her voice back under control. "Any sign of secondary detonations?" "Negative," came the reply. "Looks like a single large device, remote-triggered or command-detonated. They were waiting." In her ear, Cole spoke again, quieter now. "Raven, Viking 1, we felt that. That was the entrance?" "Affirmative," she said. "You'd have been on those steps." He didn't answer for a moment. When he did, his tone held a thread of something new, reluctant acknowledgement, or maybe just the echo of what almost was. "Copy," he said. "Holding." Elena stared at the pulverized entrance until the dust began to settle, her heart finally slowing. Someone had known exactly how they liked to go through doors. Someone had drawn a bullseye around that knowledge and waited for her to be predictable. Tonight, she'd refused. It saved them. It also meant Grey Wolf, or whoever he really was, now knew something about her too, that she was willing to hold in the face of pressure. The game had just moved to a new board. By dawn, the hospital footage had been replayed so many times, the pixels felt burned into Elena's eyes. The explosion at the entrance looked the same every time. One bright bloom, one rolling wave of dust, one empty set of steps where there should have been men. Each replay only hardened the questions. Someone had known where they liked to stand. The makeshift analysis room on the far side of the talk hummed with electronics and fatigue. 2 junior signals techs sat hunched over terminals, pale faces washed in monitor light, empty energy drink cans crowding the keyboards. Fluorescent tubes buzzed overhead. Elena stood behind them, arms folded, watching lines of log entries scroll. "Run it again," she said. "Filter by any access to the hospital operation draft in the last 48 hours. "Already up, ma'am," one of the techs replied. He tapped a few keys. A shorter list populated the screen, user IDs, timestamps, terminal tags. She scanned it, lips moving silently. Planning cell, battle captain, her own login from when she'd reviewed the concept of operations. Nothing surprising, until the bottom. User, agency LN03 time, 22.14L terminal, TOS CWS 6. "Who's on agency LN03? She asked, though she knew the answer. The tech hesitated. "That's the CIA Liaison account, ma'am. Shared, technically, but Hale's the only one we've seen actually log in with it." "And TOC WS6? He pulled up a diagram. "Corner workstation by the map wall near the coffee pot." She pictured the talk last night. Hale leaning on that exact corner, talking them through his narrative about Grey Wolf's habits. And her, at the time of that log entry, in the secure comms room on the far side of the base, headset clamped to her head, while Echo 1 loaded her with flexible ROE and responsibility. She hadn't been watching who else was moving around the floor. "Bring up the camera," she said. The tech blinked. "Ma'am?" "Internal TOC CCTV, Time window 21:50 to 22:30 last night. I want eyes on that workstation. Yes, ma'am. Fingers flew. Grainy black and white footage appeared in a side window, time-stamped. The camera looked down across a slice of the toque, map wall, workstations, the corner by the coffee. They scrubbed forward. People came and went, just shadows with badges. At 2212L, Hale stepped into frame, coffee mug in hand. He set it down, leaned over Talk WS6, typed for a few seconds, then glanced up at something off-screen. 2 minutes later, he walked away. Mug retrieved, expression unreadable in blurry monochrome. The access log matched that footprint almost exactly. Could be nothing, the text said quietly. Could be he was just checking the latest version. Except he already had a copy, Elena murmured, and we didn't change anything major after the planning session. The ROE for information operations echoed in her training. Need to know, controlled dissemination, minimize exposure of exact routes and timings to non-essential partners. In practice out here, those lines blurred. Too many agencies, too many overlapping authorities. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Raised voices. If you're looking for leaks, try the guys who keep whispering in Arabic, Hale was saying as he walked in, not yet seeing her. Rashid's crew has access to everything we give them. They leak like sieves when the right cousin asks. He stopped short when he saw her by the screens. Captain, he said, tone adjusting mid-syllable. Burning the candle on both ends? Same as you, she replied. We're mapping access to last night's plan, trying to see who knew enough to put a bomb exactly where our stack would have been. Hale snorted. You don't need logs for that. Any idiot in this city knows you guys like front doors. They've watched too many movies. Movies don't give you our exact H hour, she said, or the corridor we intended to use for exfil. His eyes flicked to the screen. For a fraction of a second, something tightened at the corners of his mouth. Then it was gone, replaced with professional annoyance. Look, if you're trying to pin this on agency, he said, save yourself the paperwork. My people aren't passing your playbook to Grey Wolf. The leak is in the locals or in whatever back channel you're running to Delta. Maybe both. She felt Cole's presence as he came in behind Hale, as if drawn by the scent of conflict. He said nothing yet, just leaned against the door frame, listening. I don't have a back channel for target packages, she said. Delta sees what you see, plus what they pull themselves. The only group that gets the full picture of routes, timings, and contingencies is this room. And the militia leaders you keep in the loop, Hale said. I give them windows and sectors, she countered. Not our sequence. Not where we stand. Cole finally spoke. Someone sure nailed where we would have stood. His voice was quiet, the memory of the hospital blast still close. I've seen random, that wasn't it. Hale spread his hands. Then tighten things up. Rotate your encryption keys. Limit who gets the pretty slides. But don't pretend you can run a war in a sandbox without talking to the locals and the spooks. He had a point, in theory. And yet. Elena looked back at the access log and the jittery CCTV frame with Hale bent over the terminal. Suspicion alone wasn't enough. Accusing him without hard proof would fracture everything. Agency support, liaison with the embassy, the already brittle trust web that kept resources flowing. But doing nothing meant accepting that every plan she shared openly might arrive on Grey Wolf's desk annotated. She let out a long, controlled breath. New ROE for operation planning, she said. Effective now. Detailed assault routes and H hours go through Delta's compartmented channel first. Only essential fragments get posted on the Shared net. Hale, you'll still see the target pictures and broad scheme. You will not get door numbers. His brows rose. You're cutting my legs off, Captain. I'm armor plating the ones I care about, she said. If I'm wrong, no harm. If I'm right, we stop handing our throats to whoever's sharpening knives. Cole's gaze stayed on her, unreadable, weighing whether he was part of the circle she'd just drawn, or one more piece on someone else's board. Hale's smile came slow and thin. That's a bold bet for someone who just refused to use the only toys upstairs gave her. Then we'll see how it pays out, she said. He left with a shrug, footsteps fading down the hall. The room felt heavier after he was gone. Elena signaled the techs to implement the new scheme. Segmented briefs, need-to-know routing, encryption keys rotated ahead of schedule. It wasn't foolproof, but it was a choke on the pipeline. Hours later, as the desert light shifted toward late afternoon, a new message popped onto her Delta channel. Priority flag, source line, agency LN03, forward via country team. Hail again. She opened it. Subject, HVT Grey Wolf, updated location. The text was clinical, almost elegant. A safe house in an industrial district, near a fuel depot. Guard counts, access routes, a narrow time window, too fast, too detailed, too clean. Elena stared at the screen, feeling the hairs rise along her arms. Changing the channels hadn't slowed the flow. If anything, it had just made Grey Wolf move quicker. The projector's fan was the loudest sound in the room. The briefing lights had been killed, leaving the space in shadow, seats full of silhouettes. On the far wall, the paused frame of a video hung like a wound. A man on his knees, hands bound behind his back, sack over his head, shoulders hunched in a way Elena had seen too many times. She recognized the build before the name. "Play it," Cole said. His voice came from a row halfway back, roughened by something that wasn't fatigue. Hale, standing by the laptop, hit the spacebar. The video jerked into motion, grainy, low-res, filmed on a phone. The kneeling man's chest rose and fell quickly. Behind him, 3 figures in mismatched camouflage and masks faced the camera, rifles held muzzle up in a parody of order. One stepped forward. His Arabic was clear, loud, rehearsed. "These are the invaders who come to our streets," he said. "They kill our sons. They desecrate our dead. Here is one of their jackals. If they do not leave Al-Sara, if they do not free our brothers, we will return him to his family in pieces." The camera shook slightly, as if held by nervous hands. Elena listened, translating automatically in her head, but her attention kept drifting to the edges of the frame. A cracked wall, a narrow window high up, the faint echo of voices outside, and under it all, a sound most people would tune out, the distant call to prayer. It was wrong. Not the words, she couldn't hear those clearly, but the cadence, the shape. It was the evening call, Maghrib, stretched thin through bad audio. The timestamp in the corner, however, read 23:17, well into the night hours. "Freeze it," she said. Hale paused the footage, pixels smeared into noise. "Again?" he asked. "We've been over this 3 times. "Humor me," she said. "Run the last 20 seconds again, audio up." He rewound. They listened. The threat, the standard demands, the quiver in the hostage's shoulders. In the background, the call to prayer floated in, slightly out of sync, as if played from a distance or a recording. "Metadata has it at 23:17L, Elena said. "But that's Aisha here. Different call. This is Maghrib. Evening. Either they've discovered time travel, or someone stitched this from different clips." Cole leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes glued to the screen, as if he could will the bag off the man's head. "Maybe the muezzin was late," he said, voice flat. "It's not just that," she replied. "Check the shadows in the window. They're catching a low angle, not from lamps. This was shot closer to sunset. The timestamp is dirty." Hale raised his hands. "You're assuming the phone's clock is accurate, Captain. These guys don't exactly run on Zulu. I'm assuming whoever put this together wanted us to believe it was live, in real time," she said. "They didn't care if the clock matched reality because they didn't think we'd look that closely." In the paused frame, a strip of cloth had slipped enough to show the hostage's jawline. Stubble. A bruise beneath his ear. Elena felt her chest tighten. She'd seen his file photo, Petty Officer Second Class Jake Mercer, missing from a patrol 2 weeks ago. Married. 1 daughter. Cole pointed, hand trembling just enough to notice. "That's Mercer," he said. "He wears his weight on his shoulders like that when he smoked. That's him." "I'm not saying it isn't him," Elena said. "I'm saying this tape doesn't tell us where or when he is, or if he's still alive now." The ROE for hostage situations hovered on the wall monitor to her right. Hostage life prioritized. No indirect fire or air-delivered munitions within 200 meters of identified religious sites. Old Market District requires country team concurrence for offensive ops. Intel package says Old Market, Hale put in. Audio geolocation, background chatter, some architecture cues. There's a mosque dome visible in one frame if you squint. They're using holy ground as their shield. Again. "That area's a no-go for strikes," the battle captain reminded them. "We're not asking for strikes," Cole said. "We're asking to go in and get our guy." Elena straightened. "Based on a video we can't place accurately, with manipulated metadata, in the most densely packed part of the city, next to a mosque, with every tactical disadvantage on their side." "You think they didn't know we'd come if we saw this?" Cole demanded. "They put Mercer on his knees for a reason. They know we don't leave our own behind." "That's exactly my point," she said quietly. "They're counting on us to move blind because we care." Silence spread, heavy and jagged. Hale broke it with a sigh. "Look, Captain, I'm not saying this isn't theater. Of course it is. But sometimes you have to step onto the stage. If we do nothing, they might kill him anyway. Maybe on camera. That plays on a lot more screens than just this one." Her stomach twisted. She could imagine the headlines, the hearings, the quiet visits to families where words like, "we couldn't act," tasted like ash in the mouth. "ROE still applies," she said. "No major operation in the Old Market without higher approval. No kinetic effects near the mosque. Hostage priority doesn't cancel physics." Cole stood abruptly. The chair behind him scraped. "What do you actually need, Elena?" he asked, using her first name for the first time in days. "You want another angle? Another tape? A hand-delivered invitation from Grey Wolf with GPS coordinates? Because while we're parsing shadows, he's tightening that rope around Mercer's neck." The use of her name felt like a challenge, not closeness. "When I need something that tells me a platoon of your men isn't walking into a kill box in the tightest streets of this city because someone hit send on a recycled video," she said. "Right now, I don't have that." "So your call is what?" She looked at the frozen frame one last time. The kneeling man, the masked gunman, the wrong call to prayer, the timestamp that lied. "My call," she said, "is that this tape is compromised. We flag it as psychological pressure, not actionable targeting. We increase ISR over the market, lean on our local sources, and we do not greenlight a full raid based solely on this." Cole's jaw clenched. You're telling me to sit here while they cut my guy's throat. I'm telling you I won't let Grey Wolf choose the battlefield and the terms, she replied. He stared at her a long moment, something raw in his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice was low and dangerous. Then I'll go as far as I'm allowed without you, he said, and maybe a little farther. He turned and walked out, the door slamming softly behind him. In the dim room, the projector fan whirred on, keeping the image alive on the wall. Elena reached out, hand hovering over the keyboard, then hit the key to black the screen. The room plunged into darkness. For a heartbeat, she could still see Mercer on his knees, burned into her vision, asking a question she had no decent answer for. The patrol order slid across Elena's screen like any other routine tasking. Route FAM, Night, 2X MRAP, familiarize with Sector Blue. Logged, justified, signed with Cole's name and the battle captain's counter-signature. On paper, it was exactly what every unit did in a new battle space. Learn the roads before they learned you. In her gut, it felt like something else. She brought up the map overlay. Sector Blue sprawled along the city's fringe, a lattice of paved arteries and dirt offshoots. The planned route traced a lazy loop, out the main highway, cut through an industrial strip, then back along a secondary road that edged dangerously close to the District Hale's latest too-perfect intel had circled for Grey Wolf's movements. Route familiarization, she murmured, with benefits. The battle captain, hovering nearby with a tablet of his own, shifted uneasily. Standard stuff, ma'am. Cole requested it for his convoy commanders. No contact planned, no dismounts. ROE compliant. No unilateral offensive ops without joint approval, she reminded him, tapping the policy line at the bottom of the screen. You briefed that yesterday. Yes, ma'am. He's not listing objectives, just eyes on. Exactly far enough to be defensible if someone above started asking questions. Exactly close enough to tempt a man who just watched his teammate on a hostage tape. Who approved this time window? She asked. I did, he admitted. Figured nights are safer for us and less disruptive for the locals. She nodded slowly. It wasn't a bad argument. It just wasn't the real one. On another screen, she called up the patrol manifest. 2 MR apps, 8 SEALs as observers, no attached air, no ISR specifically tasked. Cole had done his homework, kept it lean, plausible, unthreatening on the books. Her headset crackled as the convoy checked in. Raven, this is Raven Patrol, the driver called. Not Viking, not the combat call sign, a soft label for a soft mission. Ready to push from Gate 1. Copy, Raven Patrol, the watch officer replied automatically. Cleared outbound. Elena keyed her mic. Raven Patrol, this is Delta Liaison. Confirm understanding. This is route familiarization only. No dismounts to investigate compounds. No deliberate stops in unsecured areas. Acknowledge. There was a fractional pause. Delta Liaison, Raven Patrol. Copy route familiarization only, Cole's voice came back. We'll wave at the bad guys as we roll past. A joke, thin and brittle. She could have shut it down. She could have marched into the TOC, pulled rank, and ordered the patrol scrubbed, pending further tasking alignment. The policy would have supported her. And then every man on those trucks would see her as the person who'd yanked their one sanctioned movement outside the wire after a week of being told to sit and wait while enemies dictated the tempo. Instead, she took a breath and chose the line between lines. Sensor, she said quietly to the MQ-9 operator at the back of the room. What's your current loiter? Over the refinery district, he replied. Tasked by hire for pattern of life. Why? Retask to Sector Blue, she said. I want a shadow over Raven Patrol. You'll call any anomalies within 500 meters of their route. He hesitated. Ma'am, that's not the current. Use the Delta compartmented tasking code, she said. If someone complains, they can file it in triplicate. Copy, Captain. She flipped to another net. Ops, this is Markova. Spin up QRF Alpha under a vehicle maintenance drill. There was a tiny beat of confusion. Vehicle maintenance, ma'am? Yes. They're going to practice how fast they can get 2 more MR apps out the gate if something breaks down on patrol, she said. They'll stage near Gate 1, engines hot, full kit, not complicated. The officer on the other end caught on. Understood. QRF Alpha will, very enthusiastically, maintain vehicles. She heard it then, the low, building rumble of engines as the original convoy rolled toward the wire. Through the talk's thin walls, the sound vibrated underfoot. On the screen, 2 white boxes representing the MR apps moved along the route. The radio net was quiet. Too quiet. Routine check-ins. No chatter. Elena, she turned. Cole stood in the doorway of the Toka, helmet on now, NVGs flipped up, rifle hanging. He'd come up before rolling out, deliberately, knowing she'd be here. Thought I'd say goodbye before my scenic tour, he said. Didn't want you thinking I was sneaking out. You filed the route correctly, she said. That's not the same as me thinking this is a good idea. Relax, he said. We're staying in the lanes. No kicking doors. I heard your speech. You also heard me say Grey Wolf's people know our patterns, she replied. Choke points. IED belts. They learn faster than we give them credit for. That's why we're learning too, he countered. This route gets used by everyone. If Mercer's still alive, he's moving along roads like these. I need my drivers to know where the weird shadows and blind curves are. It wasn't a bad argument. It just wasn't the real one either. ROE is clear, she said softly. If this drifts into offensive territory without joint approval, I pull you back. Full stop. His gaze flicked to the main screen, where the convoy icons crept toward the industrial strip. You'll see us if we drift, he said. Won't you? I'll see you, she confirmed. Stay on the road, Captain. He gave a half salute, more acknowledgement than respect, and left. Minutes later, the MR apps moved, deeper into Sector Blue. The Reaper feed, retasked and hurrying, slewed across the map to find them, eventually locking onto 2 hulking shapes rolling along a narrow stretch where warehouses crowded close. Raven Patrol approaching choke point, the sensor operator reported. Single lane, walls on both sides, trash buildup along the ditches. Classic. Elena's shoulders tightened. She'd seen too many roads like this end in fire. Raven Patrol, Raven, she called. Advising caution. Your next 100 meters are a textbook funnel. Recommend slow roll, no stopping. Copy, Raven, came the reply. Eyes up. The drone's infrared sensor pinged something. A faint, regular pattern in the ditch ahead of the lead MRAP, shapes under the dirt that didn't quite match rock. Captain, the operator said, voice sharpening. I'm getting returns consistent with buried metal objects along the road edges, spaced evenly, could be junk, could be an IED belt. On the map, the convoy icons rolled closer, closing the distance in seconds. Elena leaned toward the screen, heart thudding. Raven Patrol, she said, her voice suddenly very clear in the headset. Delta Liaison. Halt convoy now. Say again, halt now. Possible IED signatures ahead. There was a pause as the order collided with momentum and intent. Outside, the engine noise continued for a breath longer, then began to wind down. The engine noise dropped from a growl to a strained idle as the MRAPs eased to a stop. On the drone feed, the lead vehicle's headlights cut a pale tunnel through dust, beams catching the low walls and trash-strewn ditches of the narrow road ahead. The second MRAP sat just behind, angled slightly, their combined bulk filling the lane. Beyond them, the choke point tightened into a stone throat. "Raven Patrol, confirm full stop," Elena said, knuckles white against the table's edge. "Confirmed," Cole's voice came back, clipped. "We're sitting in the open now, Captain. You want to tell me why?" The MQ-9 operator zoomed further down the road. The IR overlay showed faint, regular hotspots beneath the packed dirt along both ditches, smudges of metal where there shouldn't be any. "Because 50 meters in front of you looks like a hardware store under the ground," the operator muttered, mostly to himself. Elena caught it. "Raven Patrol," she said. "We're seeing possible IED signatures ahead, spaced, both sides of the lane. I recommend you reverse out of that funnel, slow and smooth." Silence, then the creak of a radio keyed too long. "Seeing," Cole repeated. "From where? Through what?" She hesitated. This was the line. If she stayed vague, he could write it off as hunch and roll forward. If she was honest, she'd expose everything. His stretch of the ROE, her quiet ISR retask, the QRF she'd spun up under a fake drill. "Captain," he said, sharper. "I asked a question. We're hatches closed, no dismounts, no flashlights. The only thing we see is what's in the beams. You want me to back a 20-ton truck down a one-lane alley in the dark. I need more than vibes." The drone feed showed exactly that. The MRAPs boxed in by tight walls, not much room to maneuver. One bad reverse, one crushed axle, and they'd be stuck in place with buried metal 10 truck lengths ahead. Elena swallowed the taste of pride. "ISR overhead," she said. "Delta tasked. We've got ground-penetrating radar and IR showing irregular metal objects along the road edges. That's how I know." There was a beat, as if radio waves themselves were surprised. "So you've had a bird watching us," Cole said slowly. "And you didn't think to mention that when we rolled out." "I tasked it after you left the wire," she said. "Because I suspected you'd push the envelope, and I didn't want to argue over whether the patrol existed." "Outstanding," he said. "So we're all breaking rules tonight." "You step on those lines, they're going to do more than bend," she replied. "Reverse. Now. Nice and easy. I don't care how it looks on the AAR if you scratch some paint. I care if you make it home." He didn't answer immediately. In the toke, the QRF status board flicked from yellow to green. Trucks staged, crews ready, the maintenance drill one command away from becoming a rescue. "Raven Patrol, Viking 1, Cole finally said. "Driver, reverse us out. Slow. Gunner, keep eyes on the roofs. Everyone else, shut up and hold on." On the screen, the lead MRAP's brake lights flared, then dimmed. The heavy vehicle began to inch backward, tires grinding gravel. The second MRAP followed, its driver matching the pace, mirrors inches from the walls. The MQ-9 sensor kept its gaze fixed on the ditches ahead. The buried shapes glowed faintly, heat leaching through the soil. Nothing moved. 20 meters cleared, the operator reported quietly. 30. They're almost out of the densest patch. Elena exhaled through her nose, counting heartbeats. She could feel every centimeter of that reverse in the way her shoulders tightened. Cole came back on net, voice a little tenser now. "Next time you decide to babysit me from space, Captain, maybe start with that in the brief. Next time you schedule a scenic tour along our suspect HVT corridors, maybe bring that to the Joint Planning Board," she said. We can trade lessons learned later, after you're off that road. They cleared the worst of the funnel. The drone operator's shoulders dropped a millimeter. Raven Patrol, you're past the primary signatures, Elena said. Continue reverse another 50, then pivot and RTB along alternate route Bravo. Understood? Understood, Cole replied. RTB along Bravo as soon as we get out of this coffin. The lead MR app was just easing past a wider gap where the lane opened into a side lot when the screen flared white. The blast didn't hit the convoy. It erupted where the vehicles had been moments before, a wall of dirt and debris punching upward and outward from the ditch. The road surface buckled, a jagged crater snapping into existence. Even through the talk's walls, they felt the dull thud. Coffee cups rattled. A pen rolled off a desk. "Contact southeast!" Someone in the QRF bay shouted over an open channel, reflexive even though no rounds had been fired. In the MRAPs, helmet cams jolted as the shockwave slapped the armored hulls, dust raining against bulletproof glass. "Raven, this is Raven Patrol," Cole barked. "We just had a detonation at our 6. No damage, no casualties. That was the spot you wanted us to drive over." "Negative," Elena said automatically, heart pounding. "That was the spot I wanted you nowhere near." There was a ragged breath on his end, the kind you took when realizing how narrow the margin had been. "Copy," he said. The word carried more than acknowledgement. Resentment, grudging respect, bruised ego, and relief all braided together. "Continuing reverse, then aggressing Bravo. Minimal comms from here. We'll talk later." The line clicked to routine updates. Around her, the TOC's noise surged. Reports being typed, maps updated, someone already drafting the first bullet points for the incident log. The QRF held it green, unused, but not wasted. Elena removed one ear of her headset, letting the ambient sounds of the room in. Her hands trembled briefly against the table before she forced them to still. She'd blown her quiet workaround. Everyone who read the logs would know she'd retasked ISR and micromanaged a routine patrol. Cole would know she'd been watching, not trusting, from the moment he rolled out. But the alternative had been pictures of MRAP hulls flipped and burning, names added to walls real and digital, and another investigation where someone asked why she hadn't used every tool she had. Better to be the overreaching Delta Liaison than the captain who watched a convoy vanish into fire. On the screen, the MRAP icons turned, slowly angling away from Sector Blue, heading back toward Fob Raven. Behind them, the crater in the road smoked faintly, a dark, fresh wound in the dust. Grey Wolf, or whoever laid the belt, had missed this time. But he'd learned something too. Their patrols were no longer predictable, and there was someone up there willing to drag them back from the edge of the kill box, no matter who she had to cross to do it. The city block on the main screen looked like a game board someone had grown tired of and kicked over. Under the MQ-9's gaze, roofs and alleys lay stacked in layers of shadow and pale concrete. In the center of the frame, a flat rooftop held a knot of heat signatures clustered around a darker, kneeling shape near the edge. "What rooftop execution site?" the sensor operator said, voice tight. "Multiple armed personnel, one possible hostage." The feed jittered as the camera zoomed. The rooftop clarified. A low parapet, a rusted satellite dish, 3 men on their feet and one on his knees, hands bound behind him. A pickup and 2 technicals idled on the street below, engines glowing hot in IR. The talk felt smaller than usual. People stood instead of sat, bodies angled toward the screen. The air smelled of sweat, electronics, and the faint diesel tang that seeped in from the generators outside. "Viking 1, this is Raven Talk," Elena said, headset snug. Status: Raven, Viking 1, Chief Mason replied, voice raw with energy. We're in the staging building, one structure over. We've got eyes on the target rooftop from east side windows. Distance across the gap is 7, maybe 8 meters. We can bridge it. Helmet cam stills popped onto a side monitor. Shadowed stairwells, grimy windows, a sliver of night sky between their building and the execution roof. You could practically feel the drop between. Cole came up on the net from the ground floor of the same building. We've got a team ready to cross, Captain. This is our shot. Give us the go. On the main screen, one of the standing men grabbed the bound figure by the collar, hauling him closer to the parapet. The hostage's knees scraped concrete, leaving faint smears even the IR couldn't fully erase. ROE glowed in the corner. Positive visual ID on HVT's face required before engagement. No kinetic strike without PID. Sensor, talk to me about Grey Wolf, Elena said, forcing her voice steady. Any facial? Negative, ma'am, the operator replied. One of the rooftop guys matches his build and approximate height, but he's kept his head down or turned away from the camera. Mask or scarf obscuring lower face. No clean frame. Could be him, Hale said from her left, arms folded. This is his style. Spectacle, threats. He wants you to watch. Or he wants us to move, Elena said. On the secondary monitor, a secure chat message from JSOC blinked in the corner. HVT priority remains. Tier 1 authority. Do not allow escape if PID is established. Copy traffic, she muttered, mostly to herself. Too generous with the verbs tonight. Viking 1 Raven, she keyed. Current ROE stands. No assault to capture or kill the HVT without positive visual ID. Mason's exhale crackled in her ear. Ma'am, with respect, we're not going to get a driver's license photo from up here. We've got a guy about to go off a roof. If that hostage is ours. Cole cut in, his tone edged sharp. Elena, we need to move. We wait, they throw him, load up, and disappear. This is the only time he's not behind 3 layers of bodies and concrete. Her first name again, hurled like a weapon. Sensor, she said, ignoring the jab. Widen field. Show me adjacent roofs. The image zoomed out, drawing back from the rooftop drama. 2 other buildings on the block showed faint movement, heat signatures low along parapets, tucked behind air conditioning units, not watching the hostage, but staring into the dark where the seals would emerge. There, Elena said, pointing. Secondary shooters. They're not part of the show. They're watching arcs. The operator tagged them on screen, small markers along probable firing positions that created intersecting fields over the alley between the buildings and the gap the seals would have to cross. If Viking 1 crosses, they'll be in a 360, she said. Kill box. Welcome to Tuesday, Cole replied. We know how to fight through an L-shaped ambush. What we don't know how to do is resurrect a teammate they toss off a roof while we sit here arguing doctrine. Elena stared at the kneeling figure. The camera resolution wasn't good enough to show details, but she could see the line of his spine, the way he leaned unconsciously away from the drop. Sensor, she said, softer. Can you give me anything? Tattoos, patches, anything that links this to Mercer or our missing man? Negative, the operator said. Bag over the head, sleeves down, no identifiers. Radio chatter on their side is scrambled. We can't even confirm language. It's distorted. Too many unknowns. Too many ways this could be a sick echo of the hostage tape. A composite scene designed to pull them in. JSOC is going to want to know why we let this window close, Hale murmured, low enough that only she heard. They'll see an HVT-adjacent target, possible hostage, and no lack of assets. Interesting story to tell in the AAR. She knew that. She felt every unseen eye already reading the transcript of this moment. But she also saw the crater at the hospital steps, the fresh scar in Sector Blue where the IED belt had gone off behind the reversing MR-apps. Grey Wolf set scenes. He framed choices. Tonight, he'd created the perfect moral vice. Save a man or save a team, with just enough ambiguity layered over each option to make either choice feel like cowardice. "Viking 1, Raven," she said, hearing her own heartbeat in her ears. "Hold position. You are not to cross to that roof." Static hissed. "Say again," Cole asked, incredulous. "You will not cross the gap," she repeated. "Maintain overwatch. No breach, no assault, that's an order." "Captain, that's our guy on his knees," Mason snapped. "We can put guns on those flanking positions as we cross. We're burning seconds." "I know exactly what we're burning," she cut in. "I also know you're stepping into planned fire lanes from positions we only half see, based on an HVT ID we don't have. I will not feed you into it because a terrorist built a stage." On the roof, one of the standing figures raised a pistol. The bound man flinched. "Chief," Cole said tightly over the net, "stand fast." "Copy," Mason said. The word dragged out of him. The pistol moved, gesturing theatrically toward the edge. The gunman shouted something. The audio came through the ISR feed as a distorted roar. For a second, Elena felt the hatred in the room turn and search for a home. It found her. Her chest hurt. She kept her eyes on the screen. The gunman stepped closer, planted a hand between the hostage's shoulder blades, and shoved. The kneeling shape tipped, arms bound, feet scrambling uselessly. Then he was gone, over the parapet, out of frame. In the street feed below, a small, blurred form hit pavement with awful finality. No gore, no zoom, just motion, then stillness. No one in the talk spoke. Over the net, breathing turned ragged. Mason swore, hoarse. "We could have stopped that." "Or joined him," Elena said quietly. The words tasted like ash. On the wide-angle view, the secondary shooters on the adjacent roofs shifted, some crawling forward into positions that would have overlapped the gap and the windows of the SEALs building with perfect arcs. "Marking additional shooters," the operator said, voice shaking now. "At least 8. They were waiting for movement from our side." Cole didn't answer immediately. The weight of what almost happened and what had just happened settled like dust. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, frayed, not from exertion but from something close to betrayal. "Raven, Viking 1, he said. "We're holding, but we are going to talk about this when we get back." Elena took off one side of her headset, pressing her fingertips briefly to her eyes. They'd kept the team out of the kill box. They'd also watched a man die with their boots still on safe. In the calculus she'd been given, this was the right answer. It didn't feel like one. The room they put her in for the review had no windows and too much silence. Not the busy hum of the tow sea, not the mutter of radios. Just the soft whir of a cooling fan and the occasional click of keys. It could have been anywhere. A cubicle in some stateside office, a bunker under another desert, a box suspended in orbit. Instead, it was one door down from where she'd watched a man go over a rooftop. Elena sat alone, elbows on the narrow desk, fingers steepled in front of her mouth as the MQ9 footage rolled again on the wall-mounted monitor. The timestamp in the corner marched forward toward the moment everything tipped. "Playback, quarter speed," she said. The video juddered, slowing. The rooftop in the center of the frame formed in deliberate increments. 3 armed men, 1 bound figure, the low parapet. Beyond it, the block's other roofs glowed faintly with residual heat. She let it play until the pistol appeared in the gunman's hand. Then she paused. "Overlay firing arcs from known positions," she ordered. The analysis software obeyed. Colored cones blossomed from the tagged heat signatures on adjacent roofs. Angles of potential fire projected across the gap between the SEALs building and the execution site, intersecting over the very line Mason's team would have had to take. In real time, it had only been a sense. Too many shadows in the wrong places, too many not looking at the spectacle. Now, slowed and mapped, it looked like what it was: a net. A soft knock sounded. The door opened without waiting for her answer. Cole stepped in, closing it behind him with more control than the tension in his shoulders suggested. "Couldn't wait for the official inquisition?" he asked. His eyes looked older than they had 2 days ago. No sleep, too much adrenaline, and the particular exhaustion that came from watching someone die just out of reach. "This isn't an inquisition," she said. "It's a review." "Funny thing about those," he replied. "Depends which side of the table you're on." He came to stand beside her, arms folded, gaze drawn to the screen despite himself. The frozen rooftop stared back. Mid-gesture, mid-threat, mid-theater. "You brought the footage," she said. "You wanted to see it again." "I wanted to see what you saw," he corrected. "Because from where I was standing, it looked like a handful of bad guys and 1 man we might have saved." She swallowed. "Roll it," she told the system. "Half speed this time." The scene lurched into motion. The gunman gestured, shouted. The hostage flinched. On the adjacent roofs, the secondary signatures shifted like ghosts, rifles coming up, bodies edging into better lines of fire. "Pause," she said, as one of the shaded cones swept across the imagined path of a crossing team. "There. See it?" Cole leaned in. His jaw worked. "With them in motion across that gap," she continued quietly, "you'd have had at least 3 shooters with clean lines on your first wave. 2 more once you hit the far parapet. No cover, no way to break contact without going over the edge yourselves." He didn't answer. The evidence was right there. Thermal smears resolving into threats once you gave them time. She heard her ROE refresher from that morning echo in her head. No retroactive justification for unlawful non-action. Decisions must stand on information reasonably available at the time. "None of this was visible at full speed," she said. "Not clearly. I had intuition, ISR hints, experience, not proof. If I'd greenlit the assault and you'd gone into that, JSOX could still have said I'd taken an unnecessary risk. And if we'd made it," he said, "they'd have said you were bold." "Or lucky," she replied. "Luck disappears fast when bodies hit concrete." The footage resumed. The cones shifted, overlapping more densely, as if the algorithm itself felt the rising tension. The shove, the fall, the blur of motion below. Elena paused it on the empty roof, the absence of the hostage louder than any explosion. "You were right," Cole said abruptly. The words landed between them, heavier than the silence that preceded them. "About what?" she asked. "About the kill box," he said. "About the angles. About the fact that if we'd gone, at least some of us wouldn't have come back. You want it on record? There it is." She turned to look at him. There was no sarcasm there, no grudging curl of the lip, just a flat admission worn like a fresh bruise. "This isn't about getting you to say that," she said. It's about documenting what the enemy did, how they're thinking. We need to understand it if we're going to stay ahead of it. We also need to live with it, he said, and with what we didn't do. He dropped into the chair opposite hers, the fight going out of his shoulders in a slow exhale. You didn't watch that body go off the roof from 10 meters away, he said. You didn't see how Mason's hands shook afterward, because he'd had his guys on a hair trigger and then told them to stand there. They're not mad because they think you're stupid. They're mad because you made the right call and it still feels wrong. She let that sit. It was the closest he'd come to articulating the ache she'd been carrying since the rooftop, the way correctness and guilt could live side by side without canceling each other out. JSOC's not going to care how it felt, she said after a moment. They're going to care whether my decision adhered to ROE and whether it prevented or caused unnecessary casualties. For them, it's a math problem. What are you going to tell them? He asked. She glanced at the monitor where a cursor blinked over a blank section of the after-action report. The truth, she said, that we lacked positive ID, that adjacent rooftops showed possible hostile positions, that I interpreted the risk as unacceptable for a crossing maneuver. I'll add this frame analysis in a classified annex. Those who need to see the detail will see it. And the rest? They'll see Delta Liaison assessed high risk and held the assault, she said. Full stop. He grunted. So you don't get the moral vindication in the parts everyone reads. I don't need vindication, she lied. I need the next team that rolls into a city like this to have one more page of data on how Grey Wolf stages his traps. He studied her for a long moment. You're going to carry this, he said. It wasn't a question. I carry all of them, she replied softly. The ones we lost, the ones we almost lost, the ones we saved by not moving. That's the job. He stood, fingers drumming once on the back of the chair. For what it's worth, he said. If anyone in a suit asks, I'll tell them you weren't hiding behind career calculus. You made a call that kept my team breathing. I may not like how it went down, but I won't let them hang you alone. Something in her chest eased a fraction, but only a fraction. Thank you, she said. Don't make a habit of it, he replied, a ghost of a smile flickering and dying. Us agreeing, I mean. It's bad for unit cohesion. When he left, the room felt larger and smaller at once. Elena turned back to the keyboard. The words she typed were dry, clinical, stripped of the emotion that had soaked the moment in real time. Assessment. Based on available ISR and ROE constraints, ground assault was deemed high risk with disproportionate probability of friendly casualties relative to likelihood of successful HVT capture. Decision to hold is assessed as tactically sound, given subsequent identification of additional hostile firing positions. She attached stills of the arcs, tagged by time, marked the annex classified, saved. As she hit send, a new alert flashed in the corner of her screen. Priority message from higher headquarters. Subject: TF Raven, potential redeployment. Restructuring the body text was short. Praise in the vaguest possible terms, mention of reallocation of assets, a hint that the joint task force might be broken up, redistributed, turned into bullet points on someone else's slide. She leaned back, staring at the words. So that was how this chapter would likely end. Not with a clean win or a neat arrest, but with people sent elsewhere. Missions rebranded. Grey Wolf perhaps still out there, crafting his next tableau. The rooftop, the hospital, the cratered road, each would be a case study in some closed briefing. Her name would sit in a few footnotes. The men who'd almost died, wouldn't know exactly how close they'd come. The man who had died on that roof would stay a blurred shape, unclaimed by any bright ceremony. And Elena would move on to another base, another set of screens, another set of decisions where the cost of being right felt uncomfortably like losing, quietly, in all the ways that counted. The redeployment message was still open on Elena's tablet when the runner arrived. He hovered in the talk doorway, young and nervous, militia armband too big for his thin arm. "Captain Markova?" he asked in halting English. "Commander Rashid, he says it is now or nothing. You must come." Of course he did. She glanced back at the message. TF Raven subject to restructuring, assets to be retasked. No dates, no details, just the bureaucratic equivalent of a ticking clock. "Get my vest," she told the battle captain. "And tell Cole where I'm going. Consultation with Rashid, fuel depot, checkpoint. He'll understand." Outside the wire, the night tasted of dust and diesel. The fuel depot loomed as a dim forest of tanks and pipes, their silhouettes rising against a faint orange smear of city light. The air carried the metallic tang of stored fuel and the low clank of chains or fittings shifting in the dark. Rashid's tent sat just beyond the outer fence, canvas sagging between wooden poles, lit from within by oil lamps that turned the fabric into a dull, flickering ember. Militia trucks were scattered around it, men smoking, rifles slung loose but always near at hand. Elena ducked inside. Heat and stale cigarette smoke wrapped around her. Rashid lounged on a cushion by a low table, cigarette burning between his fingers, his vest open over a pressed shirt. He smiled, the expression too quick to be fully friendly. "Captain," he said, "I wondered if you would come yourself or send one of your, how do you say, staff officers." "I don't have staff," she said. "Just problems. You said now or nothing. That tends to get my attention." He gestured for her to sit. An empty chair had been provided, the legs uneven on the packed earth. "I hear your time here may be short," he said. "Your aircraft are restless." "Rumors travel fast," she replied. "In this country, we live on rumors," he said. "Food, water, whispers. Some are more valuable than others." He stubbed out his cigarette, then leaned forward. "I have one for you. Not a rumor. A certainty. The house where the wolf sleeps." She kept her face still, pulse ticking up. "You're late to that story," she said. "We've heard about safe houses before. Not this one." His eyes gleamed. "Industrial quarter, near the depot. A warehouse with rooms inside, reinforced doors, cameras. He does not stay there always, but he keeps his teeth there. Documents, radios, trusted men. You want to hurt him before you fly away? This is where you do it." ROE lines flickered in her head. No heavy ordnance near critical fuel infrastructure. Minimize risk to civilian workers. "And what do you want?" she asked. Rashid spread his hands, as if the answer were obvious. "Weapons. 2 truckloads. The crates you keep in your pretty cages on base. Enough to arm my men so that when you go, we are not left with old rifles and empty promises. 2 truckloads. Enough to turn any local feud into a small war. Enough that someone back at Bragg or DC would trace signatures, log numbers, and see her name at the bottom of a very ugly ledger." "JSOC won't authorize that," she said. "Not a chance." JSOC. He said it like a foreign dish he didn't care to taste. "Your upstairs friends. They do not bleed here. My men do. I'm offering you a chance to take your wolf, or at least break his fangs before they call you home. That is worth some metal and wood, I think." She could walk away, tell him no, insist, on a cleaner path. fall back on regulations and ROE, and the comfort of knowing that, officially, she hadn't done anything wrong. And then, when Grey Wolf resurfaced months later in someone else's battle space, she would read the reports and wonder if this had been the window. "Suppose I believe you," she said. "Suppose this house is real. I still can't hand you 2 trucks of guns. That's not a negotiation. That's a suicide note with my signature on it." He considered her for a moment, then shrugged. "Then perhaps you fly away, and the wolf finds new homes in the spaces you leave. Perhaps he finds his way to my enemies before I can." There it was, the real leverage. Not just the threat of what Grey Wolf might do, but what Rashid might become without American oversight. She inhaled slowly, feeling the decision settle like weight across her shoulders. "I can move something smaller," she said. "A fraction of what you asked. Not from base, from storage that does not exist on any of your forms. A third party handles the handoff. You get enough to equip a few squads properly, not enough to start your own private war." His brows rose. "And in return?" "In return, I get every detail about that warehouse," she said. "Access points, guard routines, who goes in and out, who he trusts there. You put your name and your reputation on it. If it's a trap, whatever we give you will be the last favor you ever see from anyone wearing this flag." She let the steel show in her voice at the end. Rashid's smile shrank, sharpened. "You would risk your own people's anger for this?" he asked. "I'll risk their anger," she said. "I won't risk their lives on bad information. Give me something I can verify with my own eyes, from the sky. Then we'll talk about trucks." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "Fine," he said. He reached under the table and produced a folded scrap of paper, slid it across the rough wood. "Grid, description, shift pattern. 3 vehicles, 6 regular guards, 2 lieutenants. The wolf is there twice a week, usually before dawn. He keeps his records in a safe in the inner office." She memorized the coordinates before she unfolded it, but she opened it anyway, tracing the numbers. Industrial district. Too close to the fuel tanks for comfort. Outside, a metallic clang echoed from the depot, like a loose chain striking steel. "ISR first," she said. "If the pictures match the story, I move what I can. Quietly. If they don't, we will have different conversations," Rashid finished, unbothered. "But I think they will match." Back at Fob Raven, she took the scrap to the MQ-9 team. No one questioned the tasking code she used now. Delta's fingerprint was already on half the board. Within an hour, grainy overhead images of the grid she'd been given filled the screen. A squat warehouse with an inner courtyard, 2 visible, cameras, men on smoke breaks by a reinforced side door, vehicles parked in predictable patterns, armed, alert, real. "Looks like a nest," the operator said. "It looks like work," Elena replied. She felt the quiet stain settle, an unlogged promise to move guns in a way that would never appear in any sanitized brief. She could live with that, she decided, if it meant this safe house didn't survive the week. Later, in the 2C, she laid the imagery out on the table. Cole stood opposite her, jaw tight, eyes scanning the photos. "Who brought this in?" he asked. "Call it a final favor from the neighborhood," she said. "We have a window before hire pulls us apart. I want to use it." He tapped the photo of the warehouse. "He in there?" "ISR suggests this is where he keeps what matters," she said. "Whether he's home when we knock is a separate question." Cole nodded once, the motion sharp. "Viking team volunteers," he said. "If this is our last swing, we're the ones taking it." Elena met his gaze. There was still anger there, still the unresolved rooftop and the hospital and every other decision she'd made. But beneath it, for the first time in days, there was something else. A shared recognition that this might be the only kind of closure they were going to get. They built the last operation out of rectangles and acronyms. On the wall of the TIOC, the tasking board was a grid of target names, reference numbers, and colored blocks. Each block represented a compound, a raid, a risk, a set of men stepping into the dark. Elena stood close enough to feel the projector's heat on her face. The industrial safe house Rashid had pointed them to sat in the center of the display, labeled Objective Anvil. Two secondary sites, suspected meeting flats on the far side of the city, glowed at the edges as Objectives Blade and Lantern. "We hit all three, we decapitate the network," Hale said from behind her. "Safe house lieutenants, comms nodes. One night, one story to sell upstairs. Or we split our only reliable shooters 3 ways and hope nobody miscalculates," Elena said. "We're not a brigade. We're a handful of operators and a few dozen of Rashid's men who might decide they're done as soon as it gets loud." The battle captain tapped a stylus against his tablet. "JSOC's fragmentary order recommends concurrent action, ma'am. Maximum simultaneous pressure." "Recommend," she repeated. "Not require." On another monitor, live feed from the MQ-9 showed the safe house. A squat, dark rectangle in the industrial district, floodlights over the loading bay, a sliver of the fuel depot's tanks hulking in the background. Men smoked in the courtyard, rifles slung. Every so often one glanced up at the sky as if he could feel the drone. RO sat in the corner of the main display. No heavy ordnance within proximity of fuel infrastructure. No pursuit beyond grid anvil box without reauthorization. "This isn't a city block we can burn down if it goes sideways," Elena said. "If we screw up near that depot, we don't just make a crater, we make a headline." Cole leaned against the far table, helmet on, NVGs tilted up, gear strapped and ready. His team ghosted behind him, checking weapons, nodding at quiet jokes, tension coiled in their shoulders. "You spread us across 3 targets," he said. "You get 3 places to screw it up. You send us all at Anvil, we break something that matters. I vote the latter." Hale sighed. "And what do we tell upstairs about Blade and Lantern? Sorry, we got tired?" "We tell them the truth," Elena said. She stepped closer to the console, fingers hovering over the tasking interface. Resources in theater were insufficient for simultaneous objectives. On-scene assessment dictated concentration of force on the node with the highest payoff. "That's what I'm writing in the AAR anyway." The cursor blinked over Blade's column. With a few keystrokes, she flipped its status from active to hold. Then she did the same to Lantern. Their rectangles dimmed, going from bright threat to muted possibility. "What are you doing?" Hale demanded. "Making sure we don't die efficiently in 3 places instead of survive and win in 1, she said. "Anvil is live. Everything else is noise." The battle captain glanced between her and the screen. "Ma'am, JSOC put me in this chair to interpret their directives," she said. "Not to obey commas. Mark Blade and Lantern as contingent follow-ons. No tasking tonight. If they want to argue, they can do it tomorrow when everyone's back inside the wire." Cole's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Well," he said, "if you're going to take the heat, at least you're doing it for something." She looked at him. "You still volunteering?" "Vikings in," he said. "We hit Anvil, we come home. And you can tell your friends upstairs we're very sorry we didn't get blown up at 2 other addresses." Outside, clocks rolled past Oro 200L. The industrial district's lights thinned, leaving long corridors of shadow between warehouses. At OR 255L, the plan left the screen and became men moving. Two low-profile trucks, borrowed from Rashid's motor pool, carried the SEAL element toward the district, their civilian silhouettes hiding armor and hardware under tarps. Rashid's fighters set an outer cordon, more or less where they'd been told, engines idling low at intersections to stop traffic for inspection. Overhead, the MQ-9 slid into position, its sensor focused tight on the warehouse. "Raven, this is Viking 1, Cole's voice came over the net. "We're 1 block out. No visible external changes. Guards are smoking like they don't know what's about to hit them." "Copy. Viking 1, Elena said. "ROE reminder. No heavy weapons, no shots near the fuel tanks. You stay inside the anvil box. No pursuit past the north-south road. Acknowledge." "Viking 1 copies," Cole replied. "We'll leave the fireworks to another war." The trucks rolled into a side street and stopped. Helmet cam feeds flared on the side screens. Men dropping to the ground, moving to the edges, sliding NVGs down. The world turned green and close. "Stack forming on side entrance," Mason reported quietly. "Door looks reinforced, but the hinges don't." "Reaper confirms 2 on the roof, 4 in the yard, unknown inside," the operator added. "No new vehicles inbound?" Elena's hands stayed flat on the table. The urge to micromanage from the talk tugged at her, but she held it back. Her job now was to watch the board, not play every piece. "Viking 1, you are green on breach," she said. "Execute." The sound of the mechanical breacher punching the door carried faintly through the mics. Helmet cams jolted forward. Shouts in Arabic snapped through the air, followed by the deep cough of suppressed rifles. "Contact left," someone hissed. "1 down." "Hallway clear," Mason said. "Moving to inner office." On the overhead feed, bright flares of muzzle flash showed in the yard as 2 guards tried to orient toward the unseen threat. They fell before they got far. "Rashid's cordon holding?" Elena asked. "For now," the battle captain replied, listening to a second net. "They're nervous but staying put." "Keep them out of the box," she said. "Last thing we need is them freelancing inside." Inside the warehouse, the helmet cams showed narrow corridors, metal doors, fluorescent lights flickering. Someone's boots crunched on loose paper. A door at the end of the hall bore heavier locks, paint newer than the rest. "Inner office," Mason said. "Breach in 3. Elena's heartbeat climbed, matching the silent count she knew they were making on the far end. The blast of the charge was muted by distance, more felt through the wires than heard. The camera swung. File cabinets, a desk bolted to the floor, a safe behind a loose panel, maps pinned to a board, push pins marking routes out of the city, a laptop still warm on the desk. No gray wolf. "Raven, we have documents, drives, comms gear," Cole reported. His breathing was fast but controlled. "No HVT on site. This looks like his brain, not his body." Elena let the disappointment spike and pass. "Copy. Prioritize portable intel. Minimal damage to infrastructure. 30 mics on target, then exfil along Route C. Stay inside the box." On the overhead, one of the warehouse doors blew open as a pickup truck in the yard suddenly gunned forward, trying to snake past Rashid's outer cordon and out of the sector. "Unidentified vehicle heading north," the Reaper operator called. "Possible exfil element." "Viking 1, Raven," Elena said, the instinct to chase flaring. "Do not pursue. Repeat, no pursuit past the grid. ROE holds." "We can catch him," Cole said. "Just another 2 blocks and you're outside the anvil box with fuel tanks to your left and God knows what in front of you." she cut in. Negative. We take what we have and live to use it. That's the order. A beat. Copy, RTB as planned, he said. On the drone feed, the fleeing vehicle shrank, slipping into the maze of the city. Maybe Grey Wolf was in it. Maybe just one more courier. They wouldn't know tonight. Inside the safe house, Mason's camera framed a stack of hard drives going into evidence bags, a notebook full of codes, a wall map marked with routes that would soon live on other screens in other rooms. It wasn't the clean victory anyone wanted. It was something that would hurt when someone, somewhere, started to read. As the seals began to pull back, melting into the industrial shadows the way they'd arrived, Elena stood in the glow of the talk screens and felt the shape of the story settling around her. She'd narrowed the fight to one hard target, taken the heat off two others, kept explosives away from fuel tanks, brought a team home with more data than they'd gone out with, and no new names for the wall. In the official narrative, it would be a bullet point. Safe house raided. Materials recovered. HVT unconfirmed. The rest, the choices, the cancelled objectives, the vehicle she'd refused to chase, would live in the spaces between the lines, in the quiet understanding of the people who'd been there. And in the morning, someone would start asking how to turn what they'd pulled from that warehouse into the next operation she might never see. The debrief room looked like every other one she'd ever sat in. Blank walls, a too-long table, a speakerphone in the middle like an altar to distant judgment. A printed copy of the draft after-action report lay in front of Elena, corners already softening under her fingers. The words blurred if she stared too long, so she didn't. She read in small bites, checking for landmines. Opposite her, Hale lounged with a legal pad, civilian posture relaxed but eyes sharp. Cole sat to her right, uniform clean for once, beard trimmed. The stiffness in his shoulders, the only sign he'd rather be anywhere else. On the far end of the table, a laptop showed the muted faces of two staff officers dialed in from somewhere cooler and more fluorescent than Fob Raven. Their voices came through the speakerphone, measured and dry. "We have reviewed the Anvil operation against Theater ROE," one of them was saying. "No heavy ordnance near fuel infrastructure. No pursuit beyond the assigned grid without reauthorization. On paper, all actions remained inside the lines, but there were assertive interpretations." Elena knew that was aimed at her. The unilateral shelving of Blade and Lantern, the refusal to let Cole chase the fleeing vehicle beyond the Anvil box. "Assertive is why you send us," she said. "But we stayed inside ROE. That's in the log." The second staffer folded his hands, leaning toward his webcam. "We also need clarity on earlier decision points. The hospital, the rooftop incident, the hostage tape. There are questions above our pay grade about perceived risk tolerance." Perceived. A polite word for cowardice in certain circles. Hale cleared his throat. "From the agency perspective," he said, "I'd characterize Captain Markova's posture as cautious but calculable. She turned down some opportunities, yes, but she also prevented at least one potential mass casualty event at the hospital door." "The rooftop call? That's above my line to grade." He looked almost surprised at his own faint fairness. Or maybe he was hedging his bets. Cole spoke without looking at her. "At the hospital and the road, her calls kept my people breathing. At the rooftop, it cost us a man we might have saved. All three of those things are true at the same time." The first staff officer nodded slowly. "And your assessment, Captain?" Elena felt the familiar weight settle on the back of her neck, the knowledge that whatever she said next would live in transcripts long after the dust of Fob Raven had blown away. I made decisions with incomplete information under time pressure, she said. Some of them preserved combat power. One of them coincided with a man dying on a roof. I can defend the process. I can't turn outcomes into something they're not. There was a brief silence on the line, the bureaucratic equivalent of a slow blink. In the written AAR, the second staffer said, we propose the following language. Strategic decisions were made under shared command responsibility, balancing HVT priority against force protection and ROE constraints. Some opportunities for more aggressive action were deferred in favor of long-term operational viability. Shared responsibility. The phrase slid across the table like a compromise and a threat. Elena scanned the draft. In the summary, Viking Team's raid on Anvil was highlighted as decisive in degrading enemy C2 networks. Her own name appeared mostly in phrases like liaison coordination and ROE interpretation. The words Delta and Authority showed up in annexes few people would ever read. It would be easy to argue, to insist on cleaner attribution, to underline every instance where her call had mattered. It would also drag the operators deeper into the spotlight with her. Works for me, Hale said lightly. Shared responsibility. We all own a piece of this mess. Cole didn't say anything. He just watched her. Elena uncapped the pen. For a heartbeat, she imagined a different line. One where she wrote, Decision authority rested with Delta Liaison. Outcomes, good and bad, belong to this signature alone. Then she signed where they'd marked, under the neat, vague sentence about shared responsibility. Captain Markova concurs, she said. The staff officers nodded, satisfied. We appreciate your candor, one of them said, the words as hollow as the connection. TF Raven's redeployment orders will be finalized within 72 hours. Stand by for details. The call clicked off. The room felt instantly larger and more empty. Hale stood, slipping his pad into his bag. Well, he said, looks like we all live to brief another day. I'll make sure the country team knows who actually grabbed those hard drives. Might even use your name once. She doubted it, but she didn't care enough to call him on it. He left with a nod that was almost respectful. When the door shut, only she and Cole remained. You could have pushed back, he said, on the shared part. And drag you into the crosshairs with me? She asked. You think they'd stop at my decisions if I started listing every time you fought the leash? He rubbed a hand over his face. We volunteered for this, he muttered. So did I, she said. Problem is, the part I volunteered for doesn't come with the kind of credit you can hang on a wall. He looked at her then, really looked, as if trying to reconcile the woman who'd told him to hold on the rooftop with the one who'd quietly taken the weight of the paperwork bullet. Outside, dawn was beginning to bleed into the sky, a thin, pale strip over the blast walls. The base sounded different at that hour. More zippers and Velcro than gunfire, more pallets being dragged than magazines slapped in. On the airstrip, an hour later, aircraft sat with their ramps down, swallowing pallets, duffel bags, parts of TF Raven's brief existence. Elena's own ruck looked anonymous among the others at the base of the ramp. No unit patch, no loud colors, just worn fabric and standard straps. Cole walked up, helmet under his arm, flight manifest in one hand. His team milled nearby, pretending not to watch. So that's it? He asked. You disappear into another liaison gig and we go back to pretending we don't need anyone upstairs watching the board? That's usually how it goes, she said. You'll get a new name next time. Or none. But someone will be there, making calls you hate until you don't. Wind stirred a line of dust across the tarmac. An engine spooled up, low and steady. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "you were right more than once." No one else was close enough to hear. She held his gaze for a second, then nodded. "For what it's worth," she replied. "It was never about being right." She turned and walked up the ramp, the top. She didn't look back. The interior swallowed her. Web seats, cargo nets, the anonymous clatter of another movement to another war. Outside, the seals grew smaller as the aircraft's ramp rose. When the plane finally lifted, rattling into the brightening sky, there were no speeches, no ceremony. Just a line in a report, a handful of drives and evidence bags, a network somewhere bleeding out, and a woman whose name would be known mainly to the people who read annexes and remembered near misses more than headlines. No applause. Just another quiet, correct decision vanishing into the noise.